want to talk a little bit about that wonderful story that Deacon Annette just read, because we hear that story every year on the Sunday after Easter, which makes sense because it talks about the disciples coming together 1 week after the resurrection, 1 week after Easter Day. And then, of course, Thomas was with them. And you know, we have a nickname for Thomas. I wonder if people know what that nickname is. We call him Doubting Thomas. And I think that's sort of unfortunate. And I think we only do that to people who speak English. I'm not aware of it in other languages, certainly Spanish. He's Santo Tomás, Saint Thomas. But we have sort of saddled Thomas with this idea of him being the big doubter, and that he didn't have faith. And I think it's unfortunate because there are a lot of ways that we can come out wanting to know something and wanting proof of something. Thomas wasn't a doubter like a naysayer. It wasn't like he was saying, there's nothing you can say to me that will convince me that there's climate change. It wasn't like that. For Thomas, the thought of Jesus being alive again was almost too good to be true. And so he wanted to make sure that what people were saying they had seen and what they were talking about was in fact the same Jesus that he had known and loved in his earthly life. The Jesus who would walk with him and listen to him and talk with him. The Jesus who would share bread and wine with him. He wanted to know that this was the same Jesus who loved him to the point of death and of suffering. And so, in fact, he said, I want to see those marks of Christ's suffering love, because that's what the holes in his hands from the nails and the wound in his side meant, right? That Jesus loved Thomas so much and loved all of us so much that he was willing to suffer and to die. And so Thomas wanted to make sure that's the Jesus that we're talking about. And it appears that that wasn't an outrageous thing to ask, because that 1 week later, when they were gathered and Thomas was with them, guess what? Jesus appears and he says, Thomas, look, here are the marks of suffering love. Hold them. Don't let them go. It is I. And I think Thomas, well, we know Thomas was the first of all the disciples to yell out, what? My Lord and my God. Great faith there. He just wanted to be sure that he was putting his faith in the right thing, in the right Jesus. And I think this is a real message for us following Jesus 2,000 years later. Now, of course, Christ says that we are blessed who have not seen him and yet believe. But don't we all really want to see Jesus? Don't we want to know him, to be with him, to go with him? And Thomas is a great reminder to us of how that might happen, of where we can begin to look for Jesus. That perhaps we can see Jesus as a stranger talking to people along the way. Perhaps we can see Jesus at a table, breaking bread and sharing wine with friends. Perhaps we can see Jesus bringing joy and love to children. Perhaps holding the hand of a lonely girl, or sitting on a park bench, listening to and comforting a troubled teenager. We talk about our healthcare workers at this time of this virus being such superstars, and that they are. And maybe we should look for Jesus there, seeing Jesus in an operating room with his hands touching the wounds of suffering. Perhaps we could see Jesus standing among nurses gathered around a hospital bed, comforting a sick or dying person. And if we really want to know Jesus, perhaps we can even see him in such an unlikely place as a drunk homeless person lying passed out on the street. And when we can open our eyes to see Jesus in all these places where there are marks of suffering love, we too can grab hold to those marks of love and cry with Thomas, "My Lord and my God, my sweet Lord, I really want to see you. I really want to be with you. I really want to know you. And I really want to go with you, my Lord." Alleluia.